All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going over the online PDF textbook, AppInventor2, Create Your Own Android Apps by Wolber, Abelson, Spertus, and Looney. We're in the middle now of Chapter 4, which is our No Texting While Driving app. We built the interface, as you can see right here, which consists of a label that kind of explains what's going on in the app, another label which is going to contain whatever text we want to have sent back when someone texts us, a text box where we can change that text, and a modify response. So once we put the text in here and click modify, it should change up here. All right, so we built the interface, and it's time to go on now and add the behaviors to our components. As the author says, you'll start by programming the auto response behavior in which a text reply is sent to any incoming text. You'll then add blocks so the user can specify a custom response and save that persistently. So in other words, by default, when you create things in a computer program, not just in App Inventor, but in any computer programming language, the information that you work with is not persistent. If you want persistence, you typically have to do it in one of two ways. You either have to save information out to a file, be it a binary file, which is non-readable by a user, or a text file, which is readable by a user, or you have to save it to a database. And that's what we're going to do in this particular example. All right? So as it says, for the auto response behavior, you'll use App Inventor's texting component. You can think of this component, It provides the texting.messageReceived event block, all right, which shows what happens when a text is received. Here we want to automatically send back a text in response. It says you can send a text with 3 blocks. First, you need to set the phone number to which the text should be sent. Next, the message to be sent. Finally, you actually send the message. So in other words, this is what we're going to need. All right? So these are the blocks, as it says. A texting 1.message received, a set texting 1 phone number 2, a value number, a set texting message 2, a response label, and a texting send message. Think of it this way. You're going to be able to get that information from when the text comes in. You'll be able to get the phone number of the person who called you or texted you, and you want to be able to send a text back to that same phone number. So I'm going to try to duplicate what's shown here right now, which is the texting 1 message received. So I'm going to go over to my blocks editor and find my texting, and I find my message received. So there's that. All right. And again, we want to add a set texting 1 phone number, and we want to be able to get the number. And we want to be able to get that phone number. So notice it's a set phone number to get number. All right? Okay. Next, we want to set the message to response label.text. So we want to set the response label to whatever we put in here. Message. All right, so we want to set that, as mentioned, to response label.text. There's our response label. And to say just response label.text, that is a get. So we're just grabbing that information. And finally, we want to call texting1.send message. So there are our components that we just pulled out. So notice the author says here how the blocks work. When the phone receives a text message, the texting1.message received event is triggered. The phone number is sent to it along with a message. Right now, the auto response that will be sent back is, I'm driving right now, I'll contact you shortly. Now notice here, I'm not going to be testing this app. I mean, I can test it to make sure it works okay, but again, I don't have a phone connected right now. So they mention here you'll need 2 phones to test this behavior. One to run the app and one to send the initial text. And if you don't want to do that, you can kind of fake the system out by using Google Voice to send texts from the same number that you're using to run the app from. All right? After you set things up, send a text to the phone running the app. All right. The second thing that we're going to do here then, as mentioned, is we're going to enter a custom response. So we'll add blocks so you can enter your own custom response. Okay, as mentioned, we've already added a text box component, and that text box component is called new response text box. That's where you can enter the custom response. So again, that is this right here. This. Whoops, I don't want to do that. All right. So when the user puts a message in there and clicks the submit response button, we need to copy that entry into the response label up above it. So this is what we're going to use: our click button, our response set response text, our new response text, our set new response text, and some text itself. So this is what we're going to do. And again, if we take a quick look at it, it says, think of how you react with a typical input form. You type something into a text box and you click a submit button. This app is no different. So this is how we're going to prompt it, or how we're going to program it. So we're going to use the response button click event. We're going to set the response label text to whatever we just put into that text box. And then we're going to set the new response text. The first thing we want to do is empty it out so there's nothing in there whatsoever. All right, so it's submit response button dot click. And we want to put in there set response label dot text. Okay, and we want to set that to new response text box dot text. All right. Next, we want to set the new response text box dot text to nothing. So we want to make sure it's emptied out. The easiest way to probably do that is to go over to our text component, go up to the top, and that is exactly what we want. All right? Now I'm going to take this first one that we created and I'm going to collapse it just so we're sure we have enough room to work with here. And that way I can move this up. So I think they look the same. Set response label dot text, new response dot text, new response dot text, and nothing. I believe that's all correct now. All right. The event handler, as it says in this case, copies or sets what the user has entered in the new text box into the response label. And then it's going to blank it out when we get done. Sorry about that. It says, recall that the response label holds the message to be sent out in auto response to make sure. So let's do this. Let's check and make sure that it works. All right, I have not started up the emulator, foolishly on my part, but we can start it up right now. So again, connect emulator, which will take a second or so. Apologize for not doing that earlier. And then what we'll do is we will come into our text box and we will put new text in and see if that new, the text that's in there replaces what had been in there. Let me check my time here. Oh, we're doing great. Now, if by chance this comes up with an error message, meaning that I'll have to restart the system, well, I'm going to try first. Well, that looks good, actually. And I noticed that this has got to be a little bit higher. So let's just try to come in here and enter something new. Sorry, busy right now. Catch you later. And when I click the modify response, that should come into here. And you can see it does. So as of right now, it works. I could have used the keyboard here too. I'm not going to even keep it up there, so I'm just going to click done. That's typically what you'd be doing, and you really should get used to doing that, so that's silly on my part to be using the regular hard keyboard. All right, so you saw how that works. Again, I want to come back here and I want to go to the designer and I want to make this higher than it is right now. Right now it's set to 30 pixels, and I don't know if I'm going to make it just like 45. Probably more than I need, but if we come back and look in here, it looks a little cleaner now. Again, we could play and we could come in here and we could use different layouts, etc. So we could have a horizontal arrangement or a vertical or whatever. The point is, with this program right here, we're not trying so much for prettiness, we're trying for functionality. All right. So your user can now customize the auto response, but there's one catch. If the user enters the custom response and closes the app and then relaunches it, and I could do that, but I don't want to waste our time doing that, the custom response will not appear, rather the default will. All right, and that probably isn't what you'd expect if you were actually using this app. So we want to make sure that the custom response is stored persistently. Placing the data in that label is technically storing it, but that's known as transient data. Transient data is kind of like the RAM on a computer. All right, RAM is subject to electric current, and once you either turn the computer off, or if it's plugged in, you unplug it. It doesn't have battery type of thing. It all goes away. So if you want your app to remember something persistently, as it says, you'll have to transfer it from some kind of a short-term memory to a long-term memory, either a database or a file, which I discussed earlier. All right. To store data persistently in AppInventor, in our case, we will use the TinyDB component, which stores it in a file on our device. TinyDB provides two functions, store value and get value. With store value, the app can store information in the device's database. With get value, the app can retrieve information that's already been stored. For many apps, as mentioned here, you use the following type of setup. You store data in the database each time the user submits a new value. When the app launches, you load the data from the database into that variable or property. All right, so we're going to do this right here. It says you start by modifying your button's click event so that it stores data persistently. The blocks that we're going to use are shown right here, the store value, okay, the new text, and the response label. All right, I'm going to put this in just 1 second. All right, I'm going to do this and then try to do the screen 1 initialize in this lecture still. We'll see how are we doing for time. We're getting close. I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to pick it up right there on how blocks work in just a couple.